Antimage and Isekai LitRPG Adventure, Ends of Magic Book 1. Audiobook by Kevin. Chapter 47. Consequences for Treason. Nathan was holding a letter from Tial in his hand. Something pushed him to do the polite thing and read the entire letter. But fuck that. This letter was from somebody who didn't deserve to be treated as a person, much less given their polite social due. Nathan spun on his heel and took off towards the Adventurers Guild, leaving the man who'd given him the letter open-mouthed in his wake. He heard somebody else behind him swear, "Harpy's tits, net him Tessa." Nathan glanced over his shoulder and saw a woman raise a large, crossbow-shaped device and fire it. A net unfurled and flew at him. Too late, idiots. Nathan turned sharply, putting the corner of a building between him and the net. He just needed to make it down the block, round another corner, and he'd be at the Adventurers Guild. He'd show Sudriel the letter and describe their faces. These assholes were screwed. Then the net curved around the corner and caught him. Nathan stumbled and refused to fall for a few steps until the net tangled his legs. He hopped for a moment until a sharp jerk yanked his legs out from under him. He fell forward into a roll, throwing the momentum of his body against the rope connected to the net. The rope slackened, and he heard more cursing from behind as he vaulted back to his feet, making it half a dozen feet farther down the street. He could only hop or roll, and rolling covered more distance. "I will roll to the guild if I have to." Low-tier tumbling 5 achieved. Nathan made another roll down the street. On the next roll, the rope jerked backwards much more violently than before. Nathan slammed against the cobblestones as his feet were yanked backwards. He yelled as loud as he could, pushing stamina to his lungs. "Hey, help, I'm being abducted by Giant's Rest, help me." None of that now. Nathan twisted around as he took another breath, looking through the net. The same man who had spied on him with Stella and her parents stood over him, blackened chainmail complementing his dark hair and stubbled face. He threw a thin blanket over Nathan, and all sound cut out. Nathan could vaguely feel the magic in the blanket. It must have been enchanted to block sound. He focused on sucking the magic out of it, but he was separated by the rope of the net. Well, this is fucking dumb. Nathan felt his rage start to flow. He squirmed, trying to free himself from the net. It resisted, twisting with his motions to bind him tighter. The net wasn't magical, a skill or talent maybe. He wormed his fingers through the net and tore at the blanket. He managed to get a strand of the net in his teeth and bit down. It was tough rope, coated with some sort of nasty pitch. Nathan didn't give a shit and started wearing down the rope with his teeth, tearing with his hands and thrashing his feet. Somebody kicked him hard in the chest, but Nathan barely felt it. He was not going to be easily captured on the street like this. His rage burned and he tore harder at the blanket. He felt the magic faltering, catching snippets of sound. Out of sight, random adventurer. He was sliding over the cobblestones as they dragged him away. Nathan kept tearing at the blanket, the sounds becoming clearer. A new voice sounded from some distance away. It was familiar. "Hail to the pack, do you have there, Nagmen?" Heavy, metallic boots clattered against the street, and Nathan focused his efforts on the blanket. He had touched enough of it to feel for the weave of the enchantment, a simple layer of mana that dampened vibrations. He tore viciously at one particular point, trying to tear a hole in the blanket. More sounds leaked in. "Your concern, Eldred. I'll buy you a..." Nathan spat out the netting he'd been chewing on. It was frayed but far from parting. He leaned into his rage, tearing with his fingertips into the blanket in front of his face. It tore. He shouted as loud as he could, pushing stamina into his lungs. "Eldred, it's Nathan. They're kidnapping me for Giant's Rest." There was a beat of silence. Nathan could see through the tear, and he saw the big, bald man in plate mail standing in front of Nathan's dark-haired captor. That was likely Nagmen. Eldred looked down at Nathan, and Nathan could see a moment of calculation pass through his eyes. His face lit with a grin, and the big plate-armored man looked back up at Nagmen and stepped back. Nagmen held out his hand placatingly. "Hold on, we can work something out." Eldred unlimbered his enormous mace. "I don't think you can. Vanguard, assemble. Take down the pack leaders." Nagman swore and tore his short swords from their scabbards. Somebody Nathan couldn't see shot a crossbow bolt at Eldred, but it broke against his armor. The bald man swung his huge mace at Nagman, who jumped back and then darted in to attack while the enormous weapon was out of position. But Eldred had expected that, and the butt of Eldred's weapon followed through to catch Nagman in the jaw. The would-be kidnapper was tossed aside by the blow, blood and teeth spraying in an arc. Eldred's face was one of glee as he ran past Nathan towards the other members of Nagman's team. Nathan heard swearing and the sound of feet on stone as they retreated in the face of the one-man assault. More members of Eldred's team swarmed around the corner, following their leader into the fight. It didn't take long. Eldred's team was big and surprisingly quick. Whatever Nagman's team was, they weren't specialized in fighting a larger group of armored adventurers. Nathan didn't see most of the fight, but after less than a minute, a few of the vanguard were untangling Nathan from the net. Eldred walked up to Nathan, grinning. He leaned on his mace, both ends of which were bloody. The big man put out a hand and hauled Nathan to his feet, laughing as he clapped a hand down on Nathan's shoulder. "Well then, I call this second meeting worthy of the memory, Nathan Lark. Let's get down to the guild and get this all sorted out. Come on, boys, bring 'em back to the guild. I think this might just be the easiest payout we've ever pulled. Drinks on Nathan." There was a cheer at that, and the vanguard grabbed the prone bodies of the pack leaders and hauled them back to the guild. Nathan made sure to grab the letter off the ground. They made quite a stir as the vanguard loudly busted into the guild carrying Nagman and the rest of his team, who were all injured in various ways. They dropped them in the center of the room as a clerk hurriedly ran out from behind the desk, already yelling at Eldred. It was Hisla, the same clerk who'd brought Nathan and the heirs up to the guildmistress after the blooding patrol. She snapped, "Eldred, what in the muck-grabber's blighted asshole is going on here?" He pointed at Nathan, shrugging and handing off responsibility. They had Nathan wrapped up, and he said they were trying to abduct him for Giant's Rest. A hush spread through the hall, and Hisla's face twisted into a grimace. She hurried back to the desk and spoke into the device that blurred her mouth. Meanwhile, Nathan was practically dragged over to the bar, where he arranged to pay the vanguard's tab for the rest of the night. The bartender quoted him a price that made Nathan wince, but he shrugged and handed over the coins. "I'd pay a lot more than that to not get captured by Giant's Rest." A door at the back of the room slammed open, and Sudriel stormed in. If Nathan had seen her mad before, this time she was furious. Her expression was truly thunderous and her spear was tightly clenched in her hand. She surveyed the room, noting the pile of beaten adventurers and the celebrating vanguard. Nathan approached her with Eldred not far behind. The bald man already held a tankard of beer and slurped it as he walked over. "Nathan, you claimed they were working for Giant's Rest. Do you have any proof?" Nathan handed her the letter with Tial's signature. It had been trapped under his body and torn a bit as he'd been dragged, but it was still legible. Nathan himself didn't know what it said yet. Sudriel scanned it, then snorted and looked back at the prone forms. "Nagman, you absolute fool." She handed the letter back to Nathan. "Put that away." She walked towards Nagman, who was starting to stir. The guildmistress snapped her fingers at the silent crowd of adventurers. "Khusro, get over here. We need to heal Nagman to hear what he would say." A mousy figure detached herself from the crowd, scampering up to Nagman. She leaned over him, then looked back up at the guildmistress in consternation. "I can't, not quickly or cheaply." Sudriel waved her hand. "I'll have the guild pay you, just get him talking, no need to make it permanent. I'll pay for a better heal if necessary." Khusro hesitated for a moment, then looked up at Sudriel's iron-firm face. The mage bent over the moaning Nagman, casting magic for nearly 30 seconds. After that, she handed him a flask and helped him sit up. Then the short and hunched mage moved to the other slumped forms, ensuring nobody would die. Nagman washed his mouth with the flask, wincing in pain before spitting out blood and another tooth. He looked around and then up at the guildmistress. She was standing above him like a god ready to pronounce judgment. His voice was slurred and uneven. "Well, fuck," Sudriel spoke. "You, an adventurer of Gemor, were hired by an archmage of Giant's Rest. And you took the job. Tell me everything and it will inform your punishment. I will be able to tell if you lie or withhold information." Good to know she's got a skill or something that can determine truth or lies. I've been worried about that kind of thing. I haven't felt any specific magic, but that doesn't rule out much. Nagman took another drink of water to stall, then breathed out raggedly. Somebody got in contact with Tessa and told her that an archmage of Giant's Rest had a job for us. An easy one with a bucket of jangle and contacts for reward. Said we could come and go freely from Giant's Rest cities, get help hunting around there if we did it. He sighed, unable to meet Sudriel's eyes. Job was to deliver the letter to Nathan and escort him to Giant's Rest. The contact said there was a good chance he'd come on his own after he read the letter, and that we should grab him if he didn't. Said he'd be low-level, under 27. We thought it was worth the risk to get to hunt around Giant's Rest. Now I want to know what the hell the letter says, if Tial thought it would make me willingly go to Giant's Rest. Sudriel was still pissed, but it was mixed with a sadness and pity. And the contact, Nagman shook his head, never showed themselves. You know the Giant's Rest agent routine. Black cloak, masked face. Got the seal of an archmage to show they're a true agent, free with coin. I didn't try to find out more. He shrugged, looking up at the wrathful guildmistress. So, what'll it be? All of the whispers in the room went silent as Sudriel considered. A few of the other members of the pack leaders watched with haggard expressions. After a moment of silence, Sudriel raised her hand with all the gravity of a bishop leading a sermon. Her spear rose to point directly at Nagman's face. He was heaving deep breaths, his eyes fixed on Sudriel's spearpoint an inch from his eyes. "The penalty for this crime should be death, executed by me now. But you have told all that you know without lie or guile. And before this shameful day you served Gemor long and well. You will be stripped of all belongings other than clothes, struck from the adventurers of Gemor and exiled from the city as you are, with one item each. I would recommend a weapon." Sudriel lowered the spear and Nagman's frame shook with tears of relief. But she wasn't done. "Go to Litcliffe or Agman. Now that you've failed Giant's Rest, they won't treat you kindly. They're not keen on independent adventurers, and you can expect to dominate as your only reward. Beware, if you strike at Gemor or the villages, I will send the 7 fools after you, with instructions to be merciless." She turned away from the terrified adventurers, quickly delegating. "Hisla, go tell the guard of the exile. Provide instructions that the pack leaders are to be gone by nightfall and killed on sight if they should return. Eldred, the vanguard, may keep the gear they have on them. The rest of their belongings will go to their families or beneficiaries. Allow them their choice of an item from their equipped gear." Then the elderly woman heaved a sad sigh, before turning and walking over to the bar for a drink. Chapter 48. A long-awaited letter back in the heir's suite. Nathan sat at the table in the common area, the letter in front of him. Everything had gone fairly smoothly after the hubbub in the guild hall. Nathan hadn't gone to watch the newly exiled pack leaders be ejected from the city. It hadn't been personal. He'd been a job for them, a job that entailed betraying Gemor. The letter sat on the table. With a sigh, Nathan bent forward to piece together the torn text. "Nathan Lark, Dimensional Treasure. I have been following your progress, and I ask you to reconsider your decision to leave Giant's Rest. There is so much to accomplish, and I have so many plans that you could be a part of if you would only ask. Your skills and your otherworldly knowledge are wasted in Gemor, a town full of monsters and barbarians that lack the resources and education to draw out your potential. Moreover, you have selfishly held the knowledge of your own world close to your breast, a decision which all those in the academy are paying for indirectly, and myself directly. For I remind you, all the potential you have is due to me. I have gone to considerable effort and expense to bring you to Davrar, that your knowledge might be used for progress and the triumph of civilization. You owe me, and you owe Davrar to use your potential. Together we can grip Davrar in our fist and bring it to our breast. With your knowledge of non-magical wonders and my magical acumen, we have only to join forces. We will rule Giant's Rest within 5 years, then the region in 10. In 20, we can change the face of Davrar with the strength of our fist. Bring the marvels from your world to this one, and people will no longer die from monsters, but live without fear on the face of Davrar. And if there are things about Giant's Rest you find objectionable, we can discuss it and learn from one another. When we control it, we can make of Giant's Rest what we want. Join me in my tower, for I will be eagerly awaiting you. Signed, Grand Dimension Archmage TLDHO Droxal, 9th Finger and 4th Researcher of the Ascendant Academy of Giant's Rest. Nathan tossed the letter onto the table with a dismissive flick before leaning back and rubbing at his eyes. He didn't even know how to feel. Just, what the fuck, man? I was half expecting some kind of dominate, enchanted into the letter or something. But no, you're just so egotistical that you think you can convince me to come back to Giant's Rest. And that I'll forget that you tried to stick me into a golem core if you don't mention it. Nathan glared at the letter. I guess this is proof that you don't need to be smart to use magic. Maybe Tial's just really bad with people. High ick, low ek, rock bottom ek, with a superiority complex. At least if he's so desperate to get me back, it's less likely he just summoned some other poor schmuck from Earth. Probably that expense he was talking about. Nathan thought back to when he'd first entered this world. He'd been disoriented from a trip through vacuum, confused by the unfamiliar surroundings, and then given the mother of all headaches by a spell that let him speak the local language. But if he leaned on enhanced memory, he could remember everything he had seen. Tial's room-sized dimensional magic contraption had been really complicated, and Nathan wasn't going to understand how it worked. But he did remember that some important-looking multicolored magical orbs had seemed to power the apparatus. And after Nathan had been summoned, most of them had shattered and broken. Maybe Tial was desperate to convince Nathan to return because he couldn't try again, and he did get demoted. Interesting. Anyway, nothing that Nathan could do about that now, except not get captured by Tial. Sudriel had already seen the letter, so she would probably be taking any necessary precautions. Nathan sure as hell wasn't about to go after the Archmage, not until he developed past level 81, or farther. Stella came through the door, looking around curiously. "Nathan, you okay? I heard." She saw him staring at the letter. "Is there a problem?" Nathan grabbed the letter and stuck it in a pouch, making a note to burn it later. "Yeah, things are fine. Some adventurers tried to kidnap me earlier, but Eldred Vanguard saved me. Not fun to be attacked inside Gemor." Stella frowned at him and the letter he'd stowed, but she didn't ask about it, just sitting down across from him. "That does not seem like a good experience. The pack leaders, yeah." Nathan waved his hand vaguely. "Yup, I hadn't heard of them before. They caught me pretty easily." Stella shrugged. "They're a harvesting team, been around for a while, well respected. Sometimes they capture local monsters alive and ship them down to Litcliffe, so I'm not surprised they could catch you. I guess they were a harvesting team now and had respect. I'm surprised that Sudriel let them live." Nathan honestly wasn't sure what to think of Sudriel exiling the pack leaders instead of executing them. Nathan wasn't pleased that they'd tried to kidnap him, but he was also glad he hadn't seen a half-dozen people executed in front of him. He was trying to get used to the violence here on Davrar, but it would be a while before he was truly cold-blooded enough to want heads to roll before his eyes. He'd have fought them without hesitation, and been willing to kill if necessary. But when they surrendered and were cooperating on the floor of the guild, he didn't have it in him. They'd taken a job, and the job had made them Nathan's enemies. But that didn't mean he had a great personal enmity for them. Nathan supposed Sudriel felt that they weren't blood enemies of Gemor, and wanted to show that there were rewards for giving up information freely. Nathan sighed, then grabbed a slate and started sketching out a basic Riemann sum. Now that he'd gone through limits with Stella, integrals shouldn't be too bad. Low-tier lecturing 6 achieved. The next day passed quickly, classes happened as normal. The highlight was a member of the Delve scholars named Mathen who lectured about the history of the dungeons of Gemor. Apparently there'd been a big celebration 30 years ago when the last dungeon of Old Gemor was cleared. That was part of why it was significant to find a new dungeon in the ruined city. They'd thought there weren't any left. Gemor was built by clearing the dungeons of Old Gemor. They knew a lot about how Old Gemor had built its fortresses, guard posts, research labs, and various other secured facilities before it was overrun in some calamity or other. They knew how the wards were designed, what kinds of constructs guarded them, and so on. Mathen was of the opinion that the dungeon the heirs had stumbled upon had been a stronghold for the Old Gemor watchkeepers, a secret police force. It might have even been their headquarters. Secret police. Fun. Somebody asked if there could be other, similarly hidden dungeons scattered around Gemor. Mathen waved his cane around in a who-knows gesture and continued in a gravelly voice. Very well could be. We'll be looking at the signature of the illusion and trying to find the bypasses to the look-away spell. It's built different than the standard Old Gemor pattern. Seems the watchkeepers got some secrets yet. One of the big things that the people who crack it will be looking for will be a map of their places in Ta City. If it's anywhere, it's there. He gestured again with the cane. That and the big all self-destruct enchant. The watchkeepers like to include those, and they tend to be poised on a hair trigger. I don't run fast enough for that shit anymore. At team practice, Stella tried to throw Nathan from a stone platform. She was using him because he was the most likely to be fine if she messed up and dropped the stone platform on top of him. Nathan promised to be very mad if that happened, so that his rage would protect him. It didn't go well. Stella was still figuring out how to move non-conjured rock, which was harder than moving conjured rock. Trying to do so against Nathan's disruptive influence was even harder. It was good practice for Stella, but Nathan mostly stood on a stone platform that jumped up, diagonally and sideways at unpredictable intervals. It's good for practicing balance at least. At first he stood with feet planted, shifting his body weight to deal with the unsteady footing. After a few jerks that deposited him on the ground, he started moving with the platform, trying to keep his center of gravity stable. Nathan realized he had a skill for this. He started incorporating moves from dodging footwork to help him keep his balance. It was tricky, but it worked. After all, the skill read, this skill will help you move your feet to more easily keep your balance and dodge attacks. And Nathan was sure as hell using it to keep his balance. Low-tier dodging footwork 10 achieved. Congratulations, you have maxed out this utility skill. It cannot be improved any further. You must achieve insight into this skill to develop it to mid-tier. After one especially chaotic series of movements, where the platform rotated up at a 45-degree angle before spinning around in a horizontal circle, Nathan felt like he was on the brink of developing the skill. The movements became steadier as Stella figured out how to balance the spellwork on each corner of the platform. It wasn't throwing him yet, but it was moving predictably up and down. He looked over to Stella. Hey, can you make it jerk around some more? Especially those circular motions. I think I might be near a skill development. Stella raised her eyebrows at him. Just remember, you asked for this. What followed earned Nathan several bruises, but he focused on the feeling of lightly moving back and forth on the platform to keep his center of gravity from picking up too much momentum. High-tier focused mind 2 achieved. It took nearly another half-hour for Nathan to ingrain the exercise into his muscle memory. Stella had the platform swinging back and forth in a broad arc, and Nathan was dancing from one end to the other to keep himself on it. The arc was slowly getting broader and deeper, and Nathan pushed with his toes, legs, and core to change his momentum enough to stay on the platform. It was more than just his feet. These were whole-body motions. Congratulations! You have developed the low-tier dodging footwork, utility skill into mid-tier dodging footwork. Utility skill, mid-tier dodging footwork. This skill will help you move yourself to more easily keep your balance and dodge attacks. Neat. He wasn't surprised to see Kadid waiting for him after the group training. Kia was also there, but she gave Nathan a shooing gesture, so he walked towards Kadid. However, somebody intercepted him, holding out a hand to bar his way. Nathan vaguely recognized the blonde-haired human as somebody from the vanguard under Eldred. Nathan hazarded a guess. Theo, right. What are you here for? Theo gestured toward the main hall. Eldred wants to talk to you, come on. He turned to leave. Nathan turned towards Kadid, who was walking up towards them. Eldred wants to see me, should I go with him? Theo turned around. Well, we saved your silly arse from getting kidnapped. You ain't gonna let that go unacknowledged, are you? He raised an eyebrow mockingly. Kadid shrugged and waved Nathan on. You'd be doing Eldred a disservice to leave him waiting after he did something like that for you. Go see how he plays this debt. I owe him a debt. I mean, I guess he saved me, but it seems crass to call that debt in. I guess it's not too different from what happened after I saved the heirs from the last dungeon. Nathan followed Theo to the guild hall in awkward silence. Inside, Eldred was monopolizing a table in the corner, and Theo steered him straight there. Eldred was drinking a beer and handed another to Nathan as he sat down. He waved Theo away, leaving them alone. There were some other adventurers in the room, but nobody particularly nearby. Eldred wiped his lips, then spoke. So, I seem to have saved one of the best adventurers of the next generation from a kidnapping, and might have made an enemy of an archmage in the process. That bout complete. Nathan gritted his teeth. Eldred was milking this for all it was worth. He was clearly leaning on social pressure and expectation to make Nathan follow the script. Sounds about right. He wants something. I can always just tell him to fuck off. I think I've got enough macho man social credit around here after the last dungeon for that to not be a giant problem. I need to try not to give him an opening to challenge me to a duel. I don't think I can beat him, and if he beats me, he'll have even more leverage. If he does that, I'm totally gonna try to disenchant all his shit, though. Eldred leaned forward, frowning as he gazed into Nathan's eyes. I'd ask if you join the vanguard. We've got a place for you, and I just know we'll get good distance with what you've got going on with magic. Able to bypass a look away not even the Delve scholars knew about. That's something I can use. I played off my resistance as a magic interaction when he asked about it before the grave tangle. I don't think he knows squat. He's fishing for a response that'll tell him more. Nathan said nothing, simply glaring at Eldred. Eldred gazed back, and they were locked in a staring contest. Neither was willing to back down. Nathan used focused mind. His eyes were drying out, but he wasn't worried about it. Well, this is idiotic. Staring contests are for middle schoolers and horny teenagers, and I'm neither. Anybody's guess as to which Eldred is. But it's the sort of stupid macho contest my build will actually help with. A few minutes later, Eldred broke the standoff first, taking another drink of beer and slapping the table. Well, if that's how it is, that's how it is. I can respect a man who won't leave his teammates, even if they're spoiled pups. They've got potential, nobody can deny that. I'd probably make the same decision in your place. Then he unhooked his massive mace and laid it on the table between them. But there's a debt between us, Nathan Lark. And if you mean to run off without paying it, I'll demand a turn in the ring. So, tell me of the insights that be worth saving your life and I'll take my pick. Well, shit. Chapter 49, Introduction to Witchcraft. Nathan looked at Eldred Vanguard over the table and thought quickly. Eldred had just demanded Nathan lay his insights out so he could pick one. Nathan had a lot of insights, some he'd used and most he hadn't. Some were his and some weren't. He'd sworn to Valhalla to not share the insight behind notice. The same was true for when Arthur had set his feet upon the path of rage. Eldred did save me from getting captured by Giant's Rest, but he pushed hard for me to join his team, as if I didn't have plans of my own. And he's generally been a pushy asshole. The heirs didn't seem to indicate they owed me a debt after I saved their lives, so I'm questioning if I really do owe as big a debt as he claims. I'm not in a position to push the issue, but I don't think I want any more to do with this guy than I have to. Him demanding a list of my insights seems pretty scummy. Nathan had to figure out which of his insights would buy Eldred off. He had to offer up something tempting enough that Eldred took it without forcing Nathan to spill every skill and talent he had. I don't think I'll convince him with spell sense or dodging footwork. Or earth scientific knowledge. That seems less useful to a straight fighter like Eldred. It would be more useful to mages and crafters. I also don't want to let out dangerous information to the wrong person. What are the insights he'd think are valuable? Probably the ones for magic resistance, regeneration, focused mind, and enhanced memory. I probably can't share magic resistance, though he might demand I start figuring out how to share it if I tell him anything about it. Shit, and that's the one he has hints about already. Maybe I should just say it requires being injected with something alchemical that I don't know how to make. I need to operate as if he has a skill to tell if I'm lying. Eldred watched Nathan closely, waiting for him to answer. He started tapping his finger impatiently on his mace, which lay on the table between them. Nathan spoke. I've got 4 real insights that I can share. 2 of them are probably not useful to you. Eldred leaned back, luxuriating in the power he had here. I'll decide that. Nathan swallowed. His least favorite part of this was that he was letting out information on his capabilities. He didn't trust Eldred not to sell that information later on. But if he didn't, Nathan looked down at the mace on the table. Eldred was an excellent one-on-one fighter. He'd beaten Arthur in a duel and had absolutely demolished Nagman in a real fight. If he beat Nathan in a duel and claimed his debt, he might have enough social capital that most of the guild would think Nathan should join the vanguard. Again, stupid macho bullshit. But I'm part of their society now. If I want to use Gemor as a base in the future, then I'll need to play by their rules. Nathan wasn't sure what happened if you didn't honor a debt for an insight or a favor in the Gemor Adventurers Guild, but it was almost certainly a social shunning of some sort. The heirs probably wouldn't completely abandon him, but it would make everything else harder and might have more consequences Nathan didn't know about. And that's the problem. Maybe I get exiled without my belongings. Maybe nobody will talk to me. I almost certainly don't keep my adventurer status that guarantees room and board. So, he continued, the best one for you is a utility skill. The big advantage is that it helps me discover other insights and develop talents and skills more easily. It's also helped me resist and break mental spells and debilitating stuff like the Grave Tangle. Eldred frowned. Sounds like some mage shit. Mental discipline or something like that, though developing things better is interesting. Nathan shrugged. Not that, it's been very helpful to me. Eldred waved it away. We'll come back to it. Next. With a sigh, Nathan continued. If you don't like that one, I doubt you'd be interested in one that makes your memory better. Eldred pursed his lips, tilting his head back and forth. That's a bit better. I might be interested in how it works. Keep going. I want to hear the one that lets a trainee not die from a surprise dungeon to the face. I guess I just gotta be vague. As Nathan was trying to phrase a description of his magic resistance, that didn't hint at how broad it was, a woman slid into the bench next to him, scooting up close enough that their elbows touched. Eldred looked peeved and waved her off. "We're talking insights here, so I'll ask you." He took a closer look at the woman and gulped audibly. He slid down the table to get farther away from her. "Feline." The woman laughed like a crystal bell, sharp and piercing. Her voice was pitched high but with a cruel and polished intent behind it. "You were demanding information you have no right to, Eldred Vanguard. Play your games elsewhere and count yourself lucky I don't take you to the ring right now for this. I've been gone a while and sometimes I find myself looking for somebody to bleed. But I saved Nathan from kidnapping. He owes me." Feline raised one dark, picturesque eyebrow. "I was tailing the Giant's Rest agent who issued that job. He was going to reach out to you next with a very generous offer. But," she laid a dagger on the table next to Eldred's mace, looking small besides the larger weapon. One detail made the dagger seem much more dangerous. The blade was red with blood along its entire length. "I found evidence that you spoke to that agent of Giant's Rest last month. You haven't done any jobs for him, or else this would be a very different conversation." She tapped a finger on the hilt of the dagger, flicking a drop of blood in Eldred's direction. "You forfeit Nathan's debt. Begone. Now." Eldred grabbed his maul and left with unseemly haste. Nathan turned to appraise his savior. She was a beautiful woman, tall and lithe. Her clothes were a set of dark robes, loose in most places. Black leather bands wound around her forearms, shins, and midriff. Nathan's eyes were drawn to a necklace holding a large and elaborately worked piece of silver and gems nestled just above her bosom. Her hair was long and dark, falling unbound around her face and past her shoulders. It had a few streaks of green, blue, and purple scattered through it. Her skin was pale, with a dusting of freckles scattered over a classically beautiful face with high cheekbones and bright green eyes which glowed slightly. She winked at him, and the winking eye flickered pink for a moment. Nathan regarded her warily, unsure what to say. After a moment he ventured, "Thank you, he's not my favorite person." She let loose another peal of sharp laughter, this one less cruel than the last. Then she focused on Nathan, inching closer to him. "Too true. He's not my favorite person either. Demanding an insight after saving somebody's life is just crass. Much less a whole list. He's competent enough, but Eldred will never topple Giant's Rest or clear a true dungeon. He's more of an annoyance than somebody worthy of real animosity. Who do you think is worthy of true animosity? Nathan Lark. I like her. Maybe she's using a skill on me, but maybe just because she's a goddamn bombshell who has apparently assassinated the person who arranged my kidnapping." Nathan replied without thinking about it too hard. "TLDHO Droxal, ninth finger and fourth researcher of the Ascendant Academy." He twisted his mouth in disgust. "And all of the mages of Giant's Rest. I'll see their empire torn down and their filthy mental magics gone with it by my life or death. Nobody who casts that magic on people deserves to live." Mid-tier earnestness 5 achieved. Phaline's grin sharpened to something nearly vampiric. "Does a human mouth normally have that many teeth? Geez." "You got his letter then." His demotion was hilarious to watch in person. "Very humiliating, you'll be glad to hear. I like your skill, it's very straightforward, truth for truth, a fair trade if there ever was such a thing." She knows about earnestness, how. Nathan looked up at her, trying to figure out how to respond. He settled for the more interesting part of her statement. "You were in Giant's Rest." Feline tilted her head sideways, looking around the room. "Yes, I travel here and there, spying. Assassinating." She picked up the bloody knife and wiped it on a cloth that came out of a hidden pouch on her arm, before sheathing it in a separate hidden pocket. Nathan followed her gaze, wondering if anybody knew that somebody who had just committed murder was sitting in the guild hall. The few adventurers who'd been close by had drifted away, and nobody seemed to be paying Nathan and Feline any attention. Feline noticed his look and waved her hand towards the rest of the room. "Nobody'll pay attention to us." Trust me." She winked again, and again her green eye flickered pink. Nathan floundered around for something to say. He wanted to impress her. After a moment, he dug into his pouch for the letter. "Do you want to read the letter?" She took the letter with a flourish. "Thank you indeed. I was wondering what TL spent his remaining funds on and why he would bother with a letter." She bent to read the torn paper, chuckling after the first paragraph. By the end, she was nearly in tears, her shoulders heaving from laughter. "Oh, he's so utterly fucked. Out of friends, out of cash, and begging his target to come back to him. He's let the prize of a decade of research slip through his fingers and has to ask for the knowledge he considers his due. That must rankle. I should get this copied and scatter it around the Ascendant Academy. He'd be the laughingstock of the place for a year. I'd need to remove the part about your valuable knowledge, though." She gave Nathan a playful yet penetrating look. Nathan swallowed, his mouth suddenly dry. He'd forgotten about that part of the letter. She handed it back to him, dexterous fingers brushing against his knuckles for a second. "You shouldn't worry about TL for some months, now that his fate is in the sewers." She paused, tapping her lips with a finger. Her nails were painted a dark purple. "You may attract the attention of other archmages who manage to discover the product of TL's research. The worst case would be if TL decides to partner with another archmage and offers to share your knowledge. But I will be residing in our lovely little town for a little while, and the plots which escape my notice are rare." Phelan shrugged, tossing her hair back over her shoulder in a dismissive manner. "It was good to see what the fuss was about and meet the man Sudriel brought to my notice. I believe I'll be seeing you again, Nathan Lark. I hope that our meeting will be inscribed across the heavens." Her playful voice evened out, and she gazed straight into his eyes as her tone became deadly serious. "For I too wish to kill every single mage who has ever trained at the Ascendant Academy. You can help me if you level up. 81 is a good start." Then she stood, stretching in a way that Nathan was sure was intentionally demonstrative of both flexibility and body shape. "I believe I have an appointment with my good friend the guildmistress. If I told you we were sisters, would you believe me?" She grinned mischievously, then slipped away. She vanished from Nathan's attention as soon as she left the table, and he focused on paying attention to the room. She wasn't using any magic he could detect, and he couldn't track her movement. He did notice the door leading upstairs open and close, even as his brain tried to pretend the motion didn't happen. Mid-tier notice 3 achieved. Nathan sat there for a moment longer, blinking. So that happened. She's scary. And hot." He was still puzzling over the strange encounter when Sarah and Arl returned to the Air Suites. It hadn't been long since Nathan's meeting with Phelan, so he was surprised to see them. They usually had dinner with their father, at least. Nathan put down the slate that he'd been using to figure out a lesson plan for Stella. They were moving through his planned math curriculum quickly, spending 3 and sometimes 4 hours a day plowing through concepts on their way to multivariable calculus. Stella had figured out Nathan's preferred algebraic notation pretty fast, and he was glad he didn't have to translate things into the bare-bones mathematical notation Gemor used. He looked up from his work at Arl and Sarah, who both wore thoughtful expressions as they barged through the door. Sarah spread her arms. "Stainel got called in for a meeting, so we're back early, and before you ask, we don't know what it was about." Nathan connected some dots. "I think I might know. I just had a strange meeting in the main hall. Somebody named Phelan. Eldred knew who she was, and he was scared of her." Arl's eyebrows went up. "The witch is back, dark hair with colored streaks, has a complicated silver amulet." Nathan looked at him, nodding. "Yeah, that's right. The witch," Arl shrugged. "It's a nickname and better than the one some adventurers use. Stainel told us that we'd never see her coming. He told us to listen to whatever she said carefully, then decide for ourselves if what she asked of us was too risky. She's been known to lead people to their deaths if it gets her what she wants. But he also said she's probably done more to protect Gemor from Giant's Rest than anybody living. What did she want of you?" She told me to level up. I'm pretty sure that's the third woman from Gemor who's told me to level up before I would be able to do anything. Sarah sat down across from him, grinning as she pulled out a knife and some wood to whittle. Welcome to the life of a trainee. We'll be doing routine jobs for a while until we're high enough level to really make sparks fly. What's high enough level? Feline mentioned 81. Arl sat down next to his sister, picking up the history book he'd been reading. Depends on your class and build, and how your talents and utility skills are doing. We all probably need to wait until 81 for the class developments we're preparing for. Weapon generalists truly need the 9 class skills. After that we should be set for a while since we've been building up our skills and talents from the start. I wouldn't be surprised if we started taking bigger jobs at a lower level than anybody else because of our advantages. But if we want to even approach our parents, then 243 is required, and most of them are over 729. Both Stella and Kachai walked through the door as Arl finished. Their parents had likewise been called away, and Nathan grew more certain that Feline had returned to Gemor for more than just him. She had something that required the attention of Gemor's top adventuring team. Well, it seemed this was who Sudriel had meant to introduce Nathan to. He hadn't expected to meet that person so quickly. Regardless, Nathan was sure he'd see her again. Maybe next time she won't have to rescue me. Chapter 50. Divine Upbringing. The next morning a guard stopped by to check in with Nathan, making sure he hadn't unleashed a soul-eating monster that had been hiding within him for the past few days. The heirs assured the guard that he was doing no more soul-eating than usual, and Nathan went on with his day. That afternoon, Kia beckoned him over along with Kachai. Kadid was also there, and threw up his arms as if to say, "Oh, come on." Nathan shrugged apologetically, but he wasn't about to pass up an opportunity to talk to Kia. Today she was wearing something closer to full plate, but without the gorget thigh or shoulder pieces. Nathan bet that those pieces were stowed in the slim fanny pack resting below her enormous greatsword. The fiery-haired adventurer was still intimidating as hell, but Nathan had interacted with her enough to know that she wasn't crazy. Just zealous. Committed, not insane. Nathan followed her and Kachai to an obscure corner of Gemor, the foot traffic on the street dwindling away. As they walked, Kia spoke, turning her head to look at him. "Phelan's in town again. She's taken an interest in you, Nathan Lark. She has said she won't try to remove you from the other heir's company, but you will be entangled in her plots going forward," she grimaced. "None else can play politics in Giant's Rest and return unscathed, and she is an invaluable source of information on their doings." She sighed and turned to address Nathan directly. "But I mislike her ways. They are brutal and she slits throats without a pause for thought. There are depths to her that none can gauge, least of all me, and I am used to being able to judge what lies in the hearts of others. I honestly don't see a problem with that as long as she slits Giant's Rest throats. They can rot in hell as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for the warning. She told me to level up before I could help her." Kia's brows furrowed. "Then I suggest you take that advice. The more powerful you become, the more likely you are to survive whatever her plots entail. It is another thing for me to consider in my decision on this insight you ask for." The three of them had arrived at Kia's home. It was a rather ramshackle house tucked against the stone wave that arched over the upper regions of Gemor. Not far away was a small stone fortress built into the ridge. Nathan knew it was a shelter, a bunker for civilians to hide in when Gemor was seriously threatened. Kia pushed through the door, which wasn't locked. The home was bare bones, with only a few rooms. The furniture was rough, bulky, and cheap. Past the entryway, Nathan saw a large area had been cut out of the rock of the ridge, forming an open room not unlike the practice chamber under Cullel and Dalo's mansion, though with a much higher ceiling. Kia waved Nathan to a seat at the crude table, while Kachai stood awkwardly to the side because there weren't enough chairs. Kia addressed Nathan directly. You ask after the insight that allows me to walk upon air as if it were solid ground. To confirm the lay of things, you have a free talent slot and wish to use this talent for yourself. You do not wish to trade it to others. Nathan nodded. If I can use your talent, I think it will make me much more effective at adventuring and especially at fighting mages. I'm very willing to swear to never pass it on to another. I just want to be as capable as I can be. Kia pursed her lips. Yes, I can see your reasoning. Do you not worry it will provide you no benefit inside a building, or underground. Most dungeons are enclosed, and the monsters that adventurers must kill are often found in underground lairs. I think its value is hard to overstate, he said, spreading his arms wide. From what I saw, you can use the talent in the middle of another motion, to exert force and reorient in midair. With practice, it seems like it could enable running faster and dodging attacks while moving or airborne. Kia pointed at him with a gauntleted hand. Yes, not many who ask understand the advantages to normal motion, and the fact that you do speaks that you would use this talent to its full potential. I am glad you understand the value of what you ask for, and I also believe you are one of few who could survive gaining this talent. She clasped her hands, studying Nathan. We come to the question of what insight you would trade in return. I have all the talents and skills I wish for. I appreciate you saving the heirs' lives, but it is expected to do so for the members of your team. Unless you have something of great worth to offer Kacha or the other heirs, an agreement is unlikely. Nathan had a response to that. I may have some useful insights to offer Kacha, but I don't think they'd balance the scale. He nodded to the armored cleric, who returned the nod but didn't speak, letting Nathan continue. I have also been teaching Stella insights that I believe will allow her to master lightning and light mana. If you owe Dalo or Kullo any favors worth your insight, they may call them in if I succeed in helping Stella gain 2 mana aspects without Davrar's assistance. Kia's eyebrows arched in mild disbelief, but Nathan plowed on. Furthermore, I am attempting to build a new kind of weapon that I believe will be of great interest to Sarah and Stanel. I believe it likely they have never seen anything like it before. It is possible that they would believe it worth an insight as well. Mid-tier earnestness 6 achieved. Kia's face now bore the faintest trace of a smile. An insight worthy of lightning. A weapon unknown to Stanel. She glanced at Kacha, who gave her a slight nod. She shrugged slightly. Regardless of practicality, those would be worth something. However, I do not hear any certainty in your statements. I will acknowledge that if either or both of your efforts succeed, I would consider trading favors with my peers to teach you the insight. However, there are certain things I want to ensure are clear as flawless gems before we continue. This talent is not quick to acquire. It will require many rank-ups before you are able to use it as you desire. The early developments are dangerous. The later developments are difficult, and those are the insights that are of true value. I would set your feet upon the path, then let you walk until you need future insights to develop the talent correctly. I do hope that your plans come to fruition soon, for you will need the time to rank up this skill before it sees serious use. She paused, then fixed him with a stern look. I only consider this because you have shown yourself to be on the righteous path and a valuable friend of the heirs. That all sounds pretty reasonable. I should check in with Beatrice and Poppy and hopefully get a prototype revolver to Sarah soon. That'll turn Stanel's head. Unfortunately, I think I've got a ways to go with Stella, and we might need some practical demonstrations before she can connect theoretical understanding with magic. He nodded again. Sounds good to me. I'll ask again when my plans pan out. Is that all? Should I go? Kacha laughed, standing. You didn't think you were getting away that easily, did you? Kia stood and started buckling on more pieces of armor. They seemed made specifically to allow her to armor up quickly and without help. No, I would see your ability before you go and train you as recompense for what you have done for Kachai. I also wish to test out your resistance to magic for myself. If that is amenable. I did want more experience with divine magic. Kachai seems incomplete somehow. They went into the practice room, and Kia placed her greatsword on a rack before picking up a duplicate. It looked nearly identical but without the enchantments or razor-sharp edge. Nathan gestured at the swords. Do you ever grab the wrong one? Kia grounded the tip of the sword and leaned the crossguard against her shoulder as she used both hands to negotiate her braided hair under her helmet. No. Then the tall woman in full plate grabbed the sword and bounded across the room at him. Kia rained blows down upon him, and it was all Nathan could do to survive the torrent of steel. Mid-tier dodging footwork too achieved. Ow. After a little while, Nathan ran out of stamina from healing the bruises and cracked bones Kia had given him thwacking his bare arms. She wasn't using magic, but she was strong, and hit significantly harder than the sentry constructs. He wiped his bloody mouth with the back of his hand. Can you start using magic on me? In response, the holy warrior muttered a short prayer under her breath, so quickly and quietly that Nathan barely caught the words blade and strength mixed in. The sword took on a golden glow, which extended out to nearly a 20-foot length. Nathan suddenly realized why the room was so large. She pointed the sword at him, and the tip flicked towards his chest. Nathan leaned backwards, but Kia merely stepped forward and jabbed. The glowing image of a sword impacted his chest. The tip sizzled apart into motes of light, scorching his skin. Just like when he was healed after the battle with the grave tangle, Nathan felt Kia's mana as warm, prickling needles. I'd be a Nathan kebab right now if I didn't resist her magic. This spell clearly wasn't a healing spell. The spell Kia had cast when she healed the villagers had carried a component of righteous anger, but the emotion in it had primarily been a soothing feeling, inspiring the recipient and encouraging them with courage. This spell was trying to cut Nathan apart. It felt simpler than the complex knots of mana that mages normally used. Instead of being woven together in a defined shape, the mana flowed in a looser configuration. If this was normal mana, it should have been spilling everywhere and fizzling out. But instead, the mana in Kia's divinely blessed sword coursed with a feeling of righteous wrath. The will to cut and burn infused the spell, every part of it radiating the sheer power of its intended purpose. The spell knew its function, and attempting to constrain and bind the surging fury in a more complex weave would only have obviated its terrible agency. If normal mana was a powerful flow of water that needed to be carefully guided, divine mana was a water elemental that only needed to be pointed at its target. Mid-tier spell sense 3 achieved. I can feel identify working on this, but it's not ranking up. I wonder if I can get Kia to cast more spells for me to pick apart for practice. That skill is hard to rank up. Nathan opened his mouth to ask, "Can you cast more?" He didn't get any further before Kia muttered another prayer, and the glowing intensity of the sword doubled. The feeling of divine wrath on Nathan's skin intensified, and he backed away from the blade quickly, leaving a raw and bleeding mark on his chest. It wasn't trying to cut him anymore. It was trying to disintegrate him. The spell had become more complex, switching functions to something similar to Tial's disintegrate spell. What the shit, he frantically dodged as Kia swung the enormous blade at him. She advanced, and Nathan had to lean into more and more acrobatics to dodge the truly stupidly sized sword. This is like fighting Ihorm the giant from Dark Souls. Can hit me from across the goddamn room. Roll. He recognized that Kia was going easy on him, giving him just enough time after each blow to regain his footing to dodge the next one. The blade annihilated Nathan's clothes and left angry red marks on his skin that wept blood, giving him plenty of motivation to keep dodging even as the magical blows refilled his stamina. Nathan got faster, optimizing his movements to return him to the ground quickly so he could redirect before the next strike came. Low-tier tumbling 6 achieved. Kia sped up as he did, mixing in more divine spells. Her armor flashed with blinding light. Nathan had already seen that spell from Kacha, but this time it was much stronger. The mana itself tried to stun him into inaction. It fought his absorption like a living thing, attacking his eyes and ears with bursts of sound and light. Maybe I really do need to think of it like a living thing. Next, Kia raised her sword vertically, almost scratching the ceiling of the chamber. She spoke another quick prayer. I command you, be still. Mana pulsed from the raised sword, washing over Nathan and trying to lock his limbs in place. It was like Tial's paralysis spell, but more active, responding to his attempts to resist. After Nathan broke the hold on his muscles, the remaining mana tried to construct force barriers to keep him still. Can I prevent it from adapting? Kia thrust a free hand to unleash a loose orb of light at Nathan. It struck like a whirling disk of blades but failed to find purchase on his skin. Nathan reached out to the spell, feeling for the motive behind the loose weave of writhing mana. There was something there. The spell had been cast with a core purpose, and that purpose was what allowed it to continue attacking Nathan even through his magic absorption. He needed to break that purpose. Low-tier Identify 9 achieved. He thrust a hand into the ongoing spell. The spell was already changing to a burning radiance that dried his skin. But Nathan followed the threads of agency, wrapping his hand around something insubstantial at the core of the spell. He closed his fist and felt the spell shatter. There was still power there, but without direction or a stable weave, it dissipated without effect. Magic Absorption 4 achieved. Divine Mana understood, hell yes, pun not intended. They ramped down the training soon after, eating a plain but filling dinner of savory porridge. Nathan looked to Kachai. Do you usually train like that? The armored wolf folk snorted, watching his adoptive mother. That training would kill me, but yes, Kia is good at pushing people to their edge. It helps with ranks. No kidding. I got 4 ranks from an hour of training. That's never happened to me before. Of course, that training would have killed most people, or left them requiring some pretty extensive healing. I suppose Kia's positioned to provide that. They chatted about adventurer politics for a bit longer before Nathan and Kachai returned together to the Adventurers Guild. More tutoring with Stella ensued, and Nathan felt like he should be really sore. But regeneration. Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com Chapter 50, 1. Clandestine Operations. Weeks passed. All the trainees finished their blooding patrol. No teams were wiped out, though one lost 3 out of 5 members when a stalker ambush drove them into a building which collapsed. The survivors were folded into the team which had lost their frontliner to a siege boar. Lessons continued, and Nathan learned more details about Gemor and its environs. They had a whole lesson on common enchantments, what you could get enchanted, and what you couldn't. Apparently Gemor's enchanters were of a high level, both because there was a lot of demand and a good supply of materials, and an abundance of ancient artifacts to learn from. Now that he wasn't as worried about being kidnapped in the streets, Nathan spent more time in the afternoons with Beatrice and Poppy. The short orc was in the process of moving his shop next to Beatrice's, and Nathan got the sense that they had meals together daily, discussing the firearm project and trying out new designs for cartridges and chambers. He shared some meals with them and would have felt like a third wheel, except that they spent much of the time poking and prodding him about technical problems with gunpowder, cartridge, and firearm manufacture. Nathan helped out as much as he could, but he'd already shared everything he'd read in various history books and Wikipedia articles. At this point, he was just helpful as another viewpoint on the problems, since the crafters couldn't bounce ideas off the people they were used to relying on. Despite some remaining issues, Their reported progress was very promising. Poppy was making a good amount of reliable black powder, and together with Beatrice had devised a device to quickly and safely pack the casings. She had also figured out rifling and built an effective trigger mechanism that dropped an enchanted hammer to spark the gunpowder through a thin disk of paper without requiring primer. I am so glad I farmed all this work off to people who can actually make shit. The first real surprise came when Nathan was called to celebrate them finalizing the cartridge design. When Nathan entered her workshop, Beatrice proudly displayed a few of the assembled cartridges to him, ready to be loaded and fired. They were beefy, almost half an inch across, and clearly carried a large powder load. Nathan blinked at the giant round of ammunition, then looked up at Poppy and Beatrice. "Why is this so big?" Both crafters shrugged, and Poppy explained. "If you're shooting at a siege boar or at mage armor, do you want your bullet to go through it or not? A bigger bullet also means more room for enchantments." The rifle bullets were the same enormous diameter as the revolver bullets, but the rifle bullet itself was longer and had a larger, tapered cartridge that held significantly more powder. "That's like a 50 cal. Damn. I'm shocked that the chambers can handle that much power. I'd expect the metal to break if your powder loads are that large," Nathan said, pointing at the rifle bullets. "I've got skills to strengthen the metal I work, and enough enchanting knowledge to trace some basic durability into the structure." Beatrice was trying to be humble, but her pride showed through the explanation. Nathan was impressed and didn't hide it. "That's awesome. Well done. If you want armor penetration, you could try putting a steel cap or tip on the bullets. That might be hard to make since the sides still need to be lead." Beatrice noted down the idea to try another day. "Any other suggestions?" After a moment of thought, Nathan gave a quick summary of everything he could recall. He explained steel-jacketed bullets and how a bullet could be hollowed out for various purposes. Beatrice listened and took notes. She had a few ideas and mentioned buying a slab of meat for testing. After they'd tapped out that topic, Beatrice brought up another. "We're having problems with residue left inside the barrels after a shot. Just a few shots and the next bullet will get jammed. I'd fix this with magic, but I wanted to ask if there were other ways to do it." The real answer is better powders. Smokeless powders or cordite wouldn't have nearly as much fouling, but that's not really doable with the resources we have. And I do want to see what magic can do for a gun. It would be pretty hard to fix without magic. How would you use magic for that? Nathan's question was directed at both of them, but it was Beatrice that answered. "I can do small stuff, but nothing like this. Probably need a cleaning or anti-stick enchantment on the inside of the barrel. We'd need a real enchanter for something like that. I'll ask my Aunt Herden, she's the best in Gemor. She's been retired almost a decade and made it clear as clean water she won't work on just anything, so it's no sure thing. But I think she'll be interested in guns. Keep it in the family. Makes sense, I suppose." Nathan tilted his head back and forth, trying to think over the idea. "And she'll also be good at making a foolproof self-destruct, right?" Beatrice nodded. "She's the best. She'll probably figure out a hand's worth of ways to improve them as a weapon. There are some other people I would ask, but only after Herden says no." Her argument made sense, and Nathan found himself agreeing. Keeping it in the Bow family seemed like a great way to maintain a layer of security. He eyed the way Beatrice's hand was almost touching Poppy's. Keep it in the family indeed. "She'll need to be sworn to secrecy, of course. Same terms as the oath we all swore, so you can't tell her the full details before that. Do you still think you can convince her?" Beatrice was visibly excited by the idea. "I think so. I'm the favorite niece, no matter what Vihala says. Some good enchantments will solve a barrel of problems. Hopefully they can still make a magic-free version that I can use. I doubt it'll be my primary armament, but it's a hell of a surprise weapon if somebody like Eldred tries to jump me. Or maybe I shouldn't be angling to use a gun at all. I don't have skills to improve a gun like Sarah and Stain'll probably do. Furthermore, my talent would probably break the self-destruct mechanism, and that would be bad. Lastly, given what happened to my first spear, there's a good chance a gun wouldn't survive my fighting style, and it looks like they're going to be goddamn expensive. Over the meal that night, they hashed out the rough price, in coin, that Nathan would pay for 2 revolvers and a rifle for Sarah, as well as several hundred rounds of ammunition for each. It wouldn't be cheap, but it also wasn't nearly as ruinous as it should have been for the amount of time and materials the 2 skilled crafters were putting into the project. That was because of the insights Nathan had shared and promised to keep sharing, even if they wouldn't be able to sell guns to most people. Nathan fully expected Stain'll to want one once he saw what they'd come up with, and he could certainly pay the necessary price. Nathan would probably need to have a talk with him to ensure he didn't arm the entire Gemor guard with the weapons. The whole deal took almost 3/4 of the cash Nathan had gotten from Stain'll, but that was what it was for. Now that it looked like the guns were going to work, Nathan realized he was on a different sort of timer. He'd put in fire breaks to prevent Giant's Rest from getting the insights behind guns, but the knowledge would spread within Gemor, even if the weapons manufacture was guarded by oath and insight. Nathan probably had years before the technology would get out. If the bows could hold up their end of the deal, then maybe he had decades. He almost certainly didn't have more than that. It was his goal to ensure that Giant's Rest wasn't a problem by that point. Later on the same evening, Nathan found himself discussing a few other insights with the blacksmith and alchemist couple. With Poppy, he started with fertilizers and painkillers. When the alchemist figured out it would require huge amounts of material to improve farm yield, he got less interested. However, Poppy was quite interested in non-magical painkillers. They discussed it, but concluded that it would be hard to get something like acetylsalicylic acid without a known natural source of it. Nathan sure hadn't seen any willow trees around. The discussion was winding down, and Nathan was debating sketching out a periodic table and diving into the basics of chemistry when Beatrice interrupted him. "You carry any insights for me, or just for the alchemical arts?" Nathan turned to address her. "How do you make steel?" She cocked her head and answered. "Mixing basic or cracked iron in a large crucible with charcoal, sometimes other metals. Keep it magically heated and mixed for a time. It works well enough, though the quality depends largely on the skills and class of the smith removing the scum from the mix," she grimaced. "I usually buy my steel from that bandit Helmug. He's got the skills to do it pretty well. My focus is more on turning good steel into good weapons, so I can't make the good stuff." Nathan was sure there was a twinkle in his eye as he grinned. "Well, I think there might be a better way. Try blowing air through the molten metal after you mix in the charcoal. It'll help heat up the metal and should remove a lot of the impurities. They'll either come out as a toxic gas or float to the top as a crust that you should be able to scoop away." Beatrice gave him the weirdest look. Then she closed her eyes and shook her head in resignation. "Okay, I'll try it out." Low-tier lecturing 7 achieved. Eventually, the giant traders returned. They'd been bouncing around the hills on various missions. Their latest had been to intercept a slaving raid headed towards the northern villages. Their ambush had managed to kill 1 enslavement mage, the second mage retreating within a powerful bubble of force. But the giant traders had hounded her until she'd run out of mana, allowing Artha to run her down. Nathan was glad to have them back. These were the only people other than Sudriel who knew he came from Earth, and he especially wanted to talk about his class development with Artha. He spent time hanging out with them all as they relaxed from their mission. Unfortunately, they were heading out on another mission early the next morning. This one was more of a routine scouting mission, ensuring that Giant's Rest wasn't building any new strongholds in the mountains that would extend their grip towards Gemor. Nathan debated trying to get them a gun or two, but he didn't think he could justify it for a number of reasons. So, he just didn't mention it. He enjoyed spending time with the giant traders. He'd had a lot more experience with adventurers now, and he recognized that the giant traders were a bit of an odd group. They were all quite different from one another with different backgrounds. And while they were friends, that seemed like a consequence of their team rather than the driving force behind it. They worked together because they shared a mission to oppose Giant's Rest. The friendships and treasure were incidental to them. Important, but not the reason they worked together. Even in relaxation they seemed more focused, more professional than the often lax guardians of Gemor. Regardless, it was good to spend time with them again. In the giant trader's private suite, Nathan listened as William described how their newly acquired weapons had been able to crack a mage armor, though they had failed against the reinforced force sphere the second mage had used. In return, Nathan described the adventurer training. Vihala made appreciative noises when Nathan described the curriculum of the classes, and they all wanted to hear the story of the Air's blooding patrol. Emerald in particular seemed enthralled by Nathan's description of dodging through the sentries to reach the bunker. Their feet half-danced on the floor during his description, as if physically playing out dodges and retreats. When Nathan mentioned that he'd taken his level 27 development during the fight, Artha's face grew stony. They talked for some time about other things, but it was clear that Artha wanted to discuss Nathan's class development in private. He didn't kick the other giant traders out, but they excused themselves pretty quickly. Nathan made a note to try to catch up with them individually next time they were in town. Eventually, an ebullient William left to go find some other mages from the Tower of Trickery, leaving Artha and Nathan alone. Nathan gazed at Artha, once again appreciating the wild majesty of the treefolk. His silver-maned face and bare chest swelling with muscles were such a picture of statuesque beauty. It was like looking at a sculptor's masterpiece. The big elk centaur's voice rumbled at Nathan. "So, tell me of your choices and your choice. I hope my lessons were helpful, even brief as they were." Nathan bowed his head, then recited his list of class options and the description of each, thanks to enhanced memory. Artha's brows furrowed when Nathan mentioned Magebane Berserker, but then his face smoothed when Nathan described Spellbreaker Juggernaut. Then Nathan got to Antimagic Monk, and Artha looked surprised. After taking a moment to collect his thoughts, Artha spoke. "Which class did you take?" Nathan didn't pause. "Spellbreaker Juggernaut," Artha nodded, relieved. "Good, and what does your rage skill say?" Nathan recited Raging Thrill. "You can voluntarily enter and exit a rage state, where you will be immersed in the thrill of combat. This will rapidly consume stamina, but will increase your strength, speed, and resilience to damage." Artha's face fully relaxed. "This is good. Classes which explicitly name Berserker tend to have uncontrollable rages, which are unable to distinguish friend and foe. They are the strongest in direct combat, but it becomes hard to fight with allies or act strategically. I would have guided you away from that path had I been present. Your raging thrill seems similar to my own crushing animosity, and that is good. It should empower you physically without crippling you mentally. Have you had problems controlling your anger outside of combat? Issues thinking clearly when presented with an obstacle? Your focused mind seemed a good tool for handling these things when we spoke last." Nathan nodded. "It is. I've been meditating on my anger and the reasons behind it daily. It feels like a deep part of my personality, but not my entire being." "What of your other skills? Did your stamina develop into another resource?" Nathan shook his head. "No, it's still stamina. If it did develop, would I still be able to use my regeneration talent? It specifically says it uses stamina. Would I be locked out from my ability to heal?" Artha's silver mane rippled as he shook his head. "Davrar will not deny you the use of your talents. When a class resource develops, then talents and skills that depend on it will change appropriately. Developed class resources tend to be more powerful but more specific. For example, stamina may have developed to rage if you had become a berserker. It would be more efficient at fueling a more powerful rage, but it would not have allowed you to enhance normal physical movements. It is a trade-off. Good to know. Nathan went on to describe all his new class skills, and Arthur listened attentively. He nodded through the list, only grimacing when Nathan described Juggernaut's inertia. Then he spoke. "That is a good list. I am glad you received unarmored resilience. Such a skill is enormously useful and one of the prized insights of my clan. The development of Brawler's indifference and antimagic blows into Juggernaut's wrath and antimagic momentum are also excellent. Your skills have become more general, more useful. If you only use a class skill in one way, then future developments will often specialize in that use, locking your tactics into one path. The trick is to use your class skills in multiple ways. Future developments will then enhance your versatility, allowing more powerful uses as you level. For if you reach the heights of levels, then you will need to use your skills in new ways. If a swordsman can only walk at a normal pace and strike within reach of his sword, then levels past 81 will not help very much. No matter how skilled, how would such a fighter fare against the grave tangle? The question was rhetorical, and Arthur took a second to consider before continuing. I am not sure of Juggernaut's inertia. It seems only useful during a limited set of circumstances, though I am sure mages will not appreciate the additional difficulty preventing your approach. And I suppose that if all of your motions carry greater momentum, it will improve the weight of your blows. He thought for a moment. Then the man's craggy face cracked open into a smile. I am pleased for you, Nathan Lark. You have become a fine fighter, and I am proud to have guided your first steps upon the path of rage. I do not think you need more guidance, and I am not able to give you much more help, for I myself have not reached the heights of level 81. Though after the last 2 missions I approach it. His smile grew wider still. Nathan grinned back, and it was a nice moment. Yeah, I really appreciate your advice and insights for my path. I like where I've ended up, though I wonder about Magic Suppressor and Antimagic Monk. Both seem like they could have been good. Arthur inclined his head a fraction. Yes, both sound like they hold potential fit to wake giants. Do not fret your choice over long. A different Nathan would have made those choices and done well with them. I would only remind you that you had nobody to teach you the details of those skills. You may have received powerful skills, but we planned for a class like Spellbreaker Juggernaut, and our planning has been rewarded. Nathan nodded. It was late and probably about time for him to return to the heir's rooms. Arthur had an early morning tomorrow, but he had one more question before he left. Arthur, what are the endings? With a sigh, Arthur rubbed his forehead. The endings, yes, you come from beyond Davrar, so you would not know. A small huff of exhaled breath drew Nathan's attention to the door of the suite. It was a quiet sound, the sort of sound you might make if you heard something surprising. Mid-tier notice 4 achieved. The door was cracked open, and Nathan looked into the dark hallway. Somebody stood there, their profile unclear. Nathan stepped towards the door, and they spun and ran. Nathan ran after, throwing the door wide and giving chase. Whoever had been spying on them was fast, and Nathan barely caught a glimpse of them disappearing around the next corner. He charged after them, sprinting for all he was worth. He didn't know what he would do if he caught the person, but step 1 was finding out who they were. The figure ran down some stairs that led outside. Nathan followed, busting through the doors and looking around to see where they'd gone from there. He didn't see anybody and was about to activate focused mind when a voice spoke from next to him. Looking for something, Nathan spun and saw Eldred leaning against the side of the building. He was smoking a stubby pipe, his face lit by the bowl as he gazed levelly at Nathan. It wasn't him. The person at the door was smaller, and their steps didn't clank as they ran. Eldred. Did you see somebody run out of this door a moment ago? Who was it, and where did they go? Eldred met Nathan's eyes and smirked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Shit, he's covering for them. Nathan eyed Eldred and curled his lip with disgust. The big man placed a hand on his maul, which leaned against the wall next to him. His gesture was clear. I won't start shit if you won't. But if you start it, I'm ending it. Nathan thought he could challenge Eldred in a duel for this and demand the name of the person who ran if he won. But Eldred couldn't challenge Nathan to a duel because of Phaline's warning, so he was clearly trying to bait Nathan into one. Prick. I wonder if he came up with the plan to spy on me. Chapter 52, an unexpected exercise. Arthur emerged from the building a moment later and saw the standoff between Eldred and Nathan. His expression grew thunderous. I understand. He paused and pawed the ground aggressively. Nathan tensed, expecting the elk centaur to attack Eldred at any moment. Eldred shifted, closing his hand on his mace and crouching slightly as he spoke past his pipe. Remember how this ended last time, Treeborn? Arthur snorted dismissively but stopped pawing the ground. Eldred, your actions are a transgression. The big centaur's voice rumbled like an advancing storm. Eldred relaxed, leaning back against the wall and smiling sweetly around his pipe. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, unless either one of you would like to challenge me, I think I'm done here. He shook out his pipe onto the ground and turned to walk away. Nathan watched him go. Could I ask Stanel to challenge him? I think I'll have a favor from him soon enough. Arthur snorted loudly and started laughing. I would greatly enjoy seeing Eldred stare the ghoul in the eye in such a way. Then he stomped the ground again. However, that is not how it works. He gestured Nathan back inside, sighing. An adventurer of Gemor is expected to stand on their own and can be challenged if they have given offense but not committed a crime within the remit of the guard. There are no formal rules to the duels of adventurers. It all works on opinion and judged fairness. In general, you are only expected to fight people of about the same weight as you. If you were wronged by Gale Shullet, the leader of the Seven Fools and the Tower of Trickery, then you could ask Dalo or Kullo Caxal to stand for you. If they had a reason to help, that could be understood by those watching. He shrugged as they walked up the shallow stairs. In this example, it could be as simple as Dalo's grudge against Gale, though it is old and clotted, or you being friendly with Stella. The guild as a whole must accept the duel's premise, the reason the fight is occurring, and the fairness of the match. The first battle is one of opinions, that a duel is appropriate. Stanel would never be one to fight Gale since one is a fighter and the other is a mage. They entered the room as Arthur continued explaining. If William wronged you, then you could ask Stella to challenge him in your stead. Or if Eldred wronged Stella, then you, Kachai, or Aro could duel him. If the offense was terrible, then it might be possible for Stanel to fight, since he is well known as a family friend. But that would be only possible if most believed Eldred had committed a great wrong, since all know it would be a one-sided beating. Kia is well known to ignore duels, though her displeasure is never to be desired. We have no evidence of Eldred's wrongdoing, so one of us would have to fight him personally. Eldred is a good fighter in the ring, and he would use victory to extol his innocence and claim a small favor of us. Arthur looked tired as he spoke. I do not like how Gemor settles these things, and I do not think Sudriel likes it either. She is working to change it, but this is how things are done. He paused, looking annoyed. In my clan, these disputes were settled by the elders, who knew all involved and could choose the wise path, most of the time. He waved a hand horizontally, dismissing the thought. That's complicated. Trial by combat but mediated by the court of public opinion. Gross. Gonna need to keep considering this. It changes the social dynamic pretty dramatically. Nathan looked up. Do you know how much they heard? Obviously when I asked about endings, but did they also hear about my class skills? Nathan felt he was understandably nervous about people knowing the details of Spellbreaker Juggernaut. Arthur responded slowly. I do not believe that the spy overheard the details of your class skills. I glanced at the door while you were describing them, and it was firmly shut as Vihala left it. I do not know what they can do with the knowledge of your origin. Okay, so it's not as bad as it could be. They might have heard that my class was Spellbreaker Juggernaut, but not much more about my abilities. TL already knows that I'm not from Davrar, though he seems to be keeping the secret to himself. But he could start spreading it at any time. And whoever the person who spied on me was, they don't know anything about my world. What can they do with just the knowledge that I'm not from Davrar? Make a public stink about it. Sudriel already knows and is fine with it. Arthur sighed, placing his hands over his eyes. Nathan, I apologize for all of this. You will learn of endings at the solstice ceremony when Sudriel tells the tale of endings. Then you will swear the adventurer's oath at your graduation ceremony. I do not think I can explain it appropriately here and now. It is late and the endings are not a small topic, but it is not a topic where ignorance will hurt you. You will swear your oath the same as any other adventurer. Nathan thought about protesting, but Arthur had a point. It was late, and they were both shaken from the spying incident. Nathan made a note to have sensitive conversations with more protections. Maybe he could ask Stella to put up force walls to block sound or something. And I guess I'll have something to look forward to at the graduation. I need to keep an eye out for Eldred from now on. I actually don't think I can do anything to him. I can't beat him in a straight fight for now. And I don't want to get caught doing something shady when I don't understand the lay of the land. The next morning, Jalba showed up in the dining hall. He strode up to the heirs, who were having a somewhat slow breakfast after their morning exercise. Nathan just felt resigned, wondering if some stupid adventurer politics shenanigans were about to cause problems. That just seemed to be the way things were going recently. Instead, Jalba gestured to encompass all the heirs. Mission for you. Come on. Now, I'll brief you as you go. The heirs looked around at each other for a moment, and Jalba clapped his hands together. They grabbed their gear and went to deposit their plates, but Jalba clapped again. Leave them. We're in a hurry. They all followed their teacher out of the building, and he explained as he walked. This is another training exercise. We're sending you out on a job in the villages without much time to prepare. You have rations for a few days, Kachai nodded. Yes, we do, Jalba hummed appreciatively. Good habit, stay in it. I'll give you this anyway. He pulled a heavy pouch from beneath his jacket and almost handed it to Nathan before reconsidering and tossing it to Arl. Dried oats in a few bowls, a good lesson for adventurers who don't prepare. Don't tell any of the other teams. That's one way to teach people to keep food on hand, make them survive off just dried oats. Stella broke in, impatient. So what's the mission? Or is that a secret too? Jalba shook his head forcefully. No, that would be stupid. We're giving you full information on the target. A small tomb appears to have opened up between Stonefall and Thop. Here's a map. It shouldn't be too dangerous. A few shepherds saw some zombies chasing sheep and tracked them to a hole in the ground. Clothing on the zombies looks either old Jamorian or from the Sklia's dominion. No ghouls or any higher undead so far. If that's all, then you should be able to go in, destroy the source of death mana, and get out. If it's too much, learn what you can and get out. Don't do anything stupid, and if you find anything indicating a Quaz linkage, get out immediately. One grave tangle is enough for this decade. He glanced back to check on their reactions, and all of the heirs nodded at him in response. Jalba seemed satisfied, and they arrived at the gates a moment later. This feels so sudden. One moment we're eating breakfast, the next we're planning on going up against a bunch of ravening dead things. I suppose that's part of the training. Off we go. Jalba gave each of them a handshake, then turned to walk back to the guild. The city gate guards rolled their eyes as Nathan left, telling the heirs that they'd need to do another round of questioning when they returned, and probably check on Nathan after a few days to rule out soul parasites. Note to self: Watch out for grayish worms hanging in doorways or on walls. Nope, nope, nope. They took the North Transit Road once again, passing quickly through Old Gemor. It really didn't take long to cover the dozens of miles to the outer curtain wall which marked the outskirts of the city. To Nathan's surprise, the transit road's effects didn't end immediately, and they walked another few miles on the road before the effect began to fade. It was extremely disconcerting, and Nathan almost threw up as one step carried him 30 feet and the next was just a normal step. He clamped down on his bile and stepped off the road, followed by the rest of the vaguely green airs. Arl did end up throwing up on the side of the road, wiping his face afterwards on a cloth. Katja shook his head. Kia always said that I'd know when to get off the transit road. I guess that's what she meant. He pulled out the map and looked it over. After a moment he waved the airs over. It was a crude map of the villages north of Gemor, which Nathan recognized from the larger version he'd seen. There was a spot marked with a red X about equidistant between Stonefall and Thop to indicate their goal. A few paths branched off from the end of the northern transit road, one heading to the right towards Stonefall, while another continued the course of the now nauseating transit road, likely leading towards Woodston and Pilryden. A third path went to the left towards the village of Hansi. The terrain was fairly flat grassland, with low rolling hills stretching off into the distance. To the right, some foothills climbed up into large mountains, growing taller and more snow-capped as they marched off into the north. Directly north of them the hills grew larger, with some steep crags visible from their path. The heirs set off down the path that led to Stonefall, chatting as they walked. Nathan listened in, reflecting as to how this was different from his last experience walking around the countryside of Davrar. Back then, he'd been in the company of a crowd of villagers with adventurers escorting them. The atmosphere had been tense, and Nathan himself was still reeling from his experiences with Tial, the near loss of agency. The violence against the slavers, he hadn't really processed it and hadn't appreciated Davrar as much. He'd been lost, unable to square his life on Earth against his new crusade against Giant's Rest. Now he'd figured a lot of that out. It felt more like he was on a hike with his friends exploring some wilderness. Actually, that was a bit weird. Nathan jumped into the conversation. Why aren't the towns closer to Gemor? Seems difficult to ship food so far. Wouldn't you want them closer? Sarah looked back at Nathan. Old Gemor is dangerous. The town locations are picked for being defendable, not transport. Dimensional bags, remember? Right. I thought before that those would really change the normal way things worked. It's harder to move people around Davrar, but easier to move things. I'm pretty sure you can't put people in a bag of holding, or else people would live in them. You wouldn't need land to build a city on. Just a defensible cave with a bunch of dimensional pockets for everybody to live inside. Nathan joined the heirs in conversation as they walked away from Old Gemor. They were hoping to pass Stonefall by the afternoon and make camp when they were relatively close to the tomb, so they could reach it in the mid-morning and have most of the day to clear it without worrying about the sun setting. It was tempting to stay in Stonefall, since all of the villages maintained barracks where adventurers could stay. But it would delay their arrival by another day, and Arl speculated that part of the test was seeing if they could tolerate the discomfort of camping in the open, or if they would plan their travel around the villages. So, they kept on, talking about everything from food to adventurer politics. I am not a real big fan of how duels work. It seems like an awful way to resolve disputes, Nathan declared, glancing around to see if any of the heirs would argue. Sarah frowned, responding defensively. It works out. Far better to have adventurers fighting each other in the ring than in back alleys, or worried they'll take a sword to the back during a delve. Nathan gave the argument his full attention, speaking slowly to be sure he didn't give unintentional offense. You're saying the alternatives are worse, not that the duels themselves are good. What if you had an alternative that addressed the tensions without creating the problems of the duels? Arl stepped into the conversation, defending his sister. I'm not sure what another alternative would be. The duels came from the early adventurers when there wasn't another way to solve a problem. The traditions of respect and limiting conflict have done the adventurers well. Nathan quirked his lips, not satisfied by their comments. It seemed more like they were defending the way adventurer duels worked because Gemor was their home, and they instinctively got defensive when it was criticized. As far as he could tell, they hadn't stopped to think about if duels were a good way to resolve disputes or not. Changing your views when somebody points out you're wrong is a skill, and not an easy one. But the first step is engaging with your own beliefs and picking apart why you believe them. Oftentimes, he forgot that the heirs were still fairly young. They had trained rigorously for life-or-death combat for years and been raised to be decent, thoughtful people. But sometimes Nathan was reminded that they were on average around 20 years old, like when they defended a system of social pressure-guided duels as a way to solve problems. Jesus, that worked out so well for Galwa. Maybe this is something I should try to talk through in more detail. So he approached the problem differently. The duel system seems like it can easily be abused. If you're stronger than somebody, then you don't have to worry about causing them problems. Kacha responded. If you clearly abuse the system, then the adventurers will see it and stop your abuse. A stronger friend of the abused party will challenge the abuser. If the problem is severe enough, then many may do so. Adventurers take care of their own. Nathan struggled to hold onto his temper at the even response. I can think of a half-dozen ways that could go wrong. What if the person being abused isn't popular? Or the person being abusive is popular and generally liked? Popular people punching down is core part of how most social structures work. Maybe somebody has skills for manipulating other adventurers and makes the situation seem fair when it's not. The court of public opinion is easily swayed. Sarah was the one to respond, twisting her mouth in disdain. Social manipulation skills are viewed with disgust. You won't be totally shunned for having one, but it'll make everybody far more distrustful of you, and word will spread if you have one. I guess earnestness does technically count, even if nobody except Phelan has picked up on it. I don't think she'll spread it around, given I'm pretty sure she's got multiple social manipulation skills of her own. Regardless, Sarah's argument didn't convince Nathan. Okay, so you have to be clever. People hide their skills anyway. I bet it's common to accuse people of having a manipulation skill to discredit them. Arl and Kachai tried to speak at the same time, and after a glance, Arl was the one to reply to Nathan. Higher-leveled, more competent adventurers should have more social pull than anybody else. They are more capable of defending people and solving problems than anybody else, so they've earned the right to place the targets. Nathan couldn't stop the next words from slipping out. Well, you're on top of the totem pole because of your parents. Would you think the same way if you were from the villages, without your inherited insights? He took a deep breath. I know that came out accusatory. I don't mean to say you're taking advantage of the unfair social structure, but try to look at it from the perspective of others. What happens if you're unpopular for a reason that isn't your fault? Like, for example, I got into an argument with Simla the other day. He could probably tell bad stories about me, shift the narrative so that people would think he was in the right in any future conflict. I'm insulated from that because of being friends with you, but without that social weight, I'd have to be wary of getting unfairly abused, because my only recourse would be to challenge him to a duel. The heirs were looking a bit conflicted, with Kacha especially wearing a thoughtful frown. None of them seemed ready to speak yet, so Nathan continued. I think it would be helpful for everybody to spend a few weeks as a social pariah at some point in their life. It's pretty awful, but that's the point. To really judge a social structure, you need to be at the bottom of it. It also does wonders for empathy and emotional toughness. Nathan realized his temper was running away and took a moment to tamp it down and reflect on his past words. But he didn't feel like he was wrong and wanted to keep talking about issues with the dueling system. To take another angle, half of the adventurers in the guild support Sudriel's training course and the other half think it's discarding valuable traditions. What happens when those two camps disagree? Can the duels resolve that? It seems too big to solve with one or two duels. It's a dispute between groups, not individuals. Without a legal, formal means to resolve differences, enmity might keep building until you get something like a civil war, especially since the duels encourage violence as a way to solve disputes. I don't want to see adventurers fighting one another in the streets over what's better for Gemor. It's good that the duels are explicitly non-lethal with very few exceptions, though I think it encourages some dumb posturing. The heirs continued to listen, and Nathan thought he might be getting through to Katja and Stella, though Stella hadn't said a lot and might just be getting bored of the whole conversation. Mage duels were quite rare after all. Katja spoke next. My mother has expressed some similar views, though not as loudly. She has managed to ignore dueling by being strong enough that nobody is willing to court her anger. He chuckled slightly. I remember a few years ago when Khazar was complaining about her refusing his challenge, so she killed a castle bear single-handedly within sight of the city walls. Arl spoke quietly. Stanel was a prolific duelist, said it was the fastest way to make enemies into friends. He met our mother that way. He gave his sister a quieting hand gesture. It didn't work. Sarah seemed to have reached a boiling point, and she yelled at Nathan. You're talking to us as if we would abuse these rules. Don't imply that, even as a game, or we might really have a reason to duel. Nathan, you know us. Do you truly think we would do such things? Nathan stopped walking and looked at Sarah. He tilted his head a bit. If a system relies on the people within it to be good, then bad people will use the system to abuse the good people. I don't think you are bad people. I just think the way adventurer duels work is bad. Sarah threw her arms wide, and Nathan noticed her eyes were wet, tears of frustration. But then why are you telling us? Nathan spread his hands gently. Change has to start somewhere. We are the best of our generation of adventurers. If we want to, we can change how things work. We can refuse duels to set an example, if nothing else. We have some power and we will have more. A famous quote from my home says that, with great power comes great responsibility. It's up to us to determine how to use our power and influence. We can change something, but that means thinking about what we want to change. Whatever causes you champion, decide on them deliberately. Don't spend your life supporting something just because it's what has always been done. Mid-tier earnestness 7 achieved. That comment shocked the conversation to a halt for a moment. The other members of the heirs paused to parse Nathan's words. Good. I got them to think. They'd always been the promising young adventurers, the heirs to their parents. They might not have considered themselves as independent agents, capable of looking into the world and saying, I think that should be different than it is. Maybe now they would. Chapter 53. A light touch of undeath. They passed the village of Stonefall in the mid-afternoon, and Nathan saw why it had that name. The small collection of houses were built atop a steep crag of rock, with a switchbacking road leading up to the village. There were a few watchtowers, but no wall around the village, and Nathan saw why. Anything capable of climbing the hundreds of feet of sheer rock would be able to scale any wall. There was a sturdy gatehouse at the top of the road, and it looked like multiple large spherical boulders were braced such that they could be rolled down the steep incline. There were more rocks piled along the ledge above the road ready to be dropped on attackers, ranging in size from Nathan's torso to his head. Stonefall indeed. Anybody coming up that road is either friendly or paced. Off to one side were a few more crags of the gray stone, which looked like they were being quarried along specific veins of darker stone. The other side of Stonefall was marked by clay pits, even if Nathan didn't see any rivers or other water features. He wondered how they got water up there. Magic, probably. The land grew rockier after passing the village, and as they approached the large hills where the tomb was located. It was still a ways off, and the heirs picked a secluded campground within a small dell where they had good visibility of their surroundings. A few games of sword-axe spear later, they divvied up the watch schedule. Nathan was amused that it was basically the same as rock, paper, scissors, but with fire emblem rules. Nathan ended up on middle watch, which was no fun, but he'd been better rested in the past weeks than any time Nathan could remember from Earth. The combination of good exercise, no computer screens, and easy meditation meant Nathan wasn't having trouble falling asleep. He was also in the best shape of his life. He figured he could handle one night of interrupted sleep. Granted, it was sleeping out in the open, with only bare camping supplies. Nathan had to correct that opinion as the heirs started pulling supplies from their bags of holding. Stella didn't have a tent in there, but she had a large blanket and several padded bedrolls that would be far more comfortable than sleeping on the solid ground. While Arl cut firewood and Sarah set up a cooking pot, Kachai was setting up tripwires around their campsite. They were nothing much, just cords tied tightly at ankle height between bushes or trees with a bell in the middle of the cord. Nathan helped Kachai surround the camp with them, covering the easy approaches with a double or even triple layer of tripwires after just 15 minutes of work. Stella looked over at Nathan apologetically. "I think you need to stay off the blanket. It's enchanted to be self-cleaning, and I don't want you to break it. You can sleep here, though." She flattened a section of bare earth with a combination of force and earth mana, then laid a bedroll atop it before throwing a blanket over the makeshift bed. "Man, I am sure glad I'm not doing this on my own, and that the heirs' parents saw fit to properly equip them for this. I wonder if the heirs appreciate the value of all this preparation. Probably, since they knew what to do. I'll need to figure out how the hell I'm traveling if I can't use dimensional storage." Soon enough, there was a small fire cracking in the center of their camp, a savory stew bubbling above it. Day became night with all of the suddenness of a light switch, revealing the spread of continents overhead. Nathan accepted a bowl of stew from Arl. It wasn't up to the standards of the Adventurers Guild, but it was savory and filling after a day of hiking. When they were done, Sarah scrubbed out the bowls with a magical cloth. The heirs weren't quite ready to go to bed. Instead, they spent some time watching the world displayed overhead while chatting. Nathan pointed upwards. "Do you ever want to go there? See that continent there with the white patch invading the black? Don't you want to go see what that is?" Katja answered after a few seconds. "Number Gemor is the place I will live and die protecting." He paused to gesture around the dark plain. "I may venture from the walls, but I will always return. I wish to learn of my father's people eventually, but I will never leave Gemor behind." There was a brief moment of silence before Arl spoke next. "I want to see what's out there. Explore beyond where the maps lie, but going somewhere where I can see Gemor above my head is too far. I want to be able to return to what is familiar, to hold that lifeline close." He looked over at his sister and she elbowed him before responding herself. "I think my brother speaks for both of us, though that might change." There was another minute of contemplation before Stella answered. They didn't pressure her. It wasn't that sort of gathering. Everybody was watching the sky, appreciating the gentle light of the lands above. When Stella did speak, it was quiet and somewhat uncertain. "I want to go as far as my magic can take me. Dalo told me that you cannot expand your limits without pushing them. I want to keep pushing the limits of magic until I can travel above my head to the world on display up there. I want to see what causes that blight we see in the sky. I want to have the power to fix it if it needs fixing. I want to see Gemor above my head, then come home with new secrets and insights that can't be found here." Nathan propped his head on his arm to look over at Stella. Her eyes were fixed overhead, burning with firelight both internal and reflected. I want to see all there is to see, learn magic undreamt of in the Ascendant Academy, gain access to every type of mana there is, and learn how Davrar works. I think I'll need to leave Gemor behind to do that. But it will always be the place I started, and no matter how far I go, I'll want to return someday. There was another moment of silence as people processed that. Nathan was half expecting somebody to chime in with a sarcastic comment about Stella's overreaching ambition. But this was a serious moment, a moment to bare your heart. They all respected each other too much to spoil it. Stella spoke again, looking towards Nathan. "What about you, Nathan? Gemor isn't your home. Do you want to return there? Do you know where it lies, or can you only point it out overhead?" Nathan looked up again, searching for any familiar continents on the off chance he could spot the Americas up there. "Nope. I can't point out my home overhead, and I don't know how to get there. But even if I did, I'm not sure I would return anytime soon. I have found a purpose here in opposing Giant's Rest, and I find myself wanting to explore. I want to see more of what Davrar has to offer. There are so many mysteries here, waiting to be discovered. I can make a difference here, probably a greater one than I could ever make on Earth. I knew of 100 scientists who could step into my role on Earth, but I'm the only person with anti-magic that I know of on Davrar. I need to see what I can do with that." Nathan almost told the heirs about Earth at that moment, but he held back in the end. Nathan grumbled about being woken up to take the middle watch, but he soon forgot his complaints. The sky was clear and beautiful above him. The night was quiet and serene. He sat there meditating with his eyes and ears open for hours. It was incredibly calm and tranquil, only interrupted on the hour by the faint trill of the enchanted rock they used to keep time. When it was time to wake Katja and Sarah for the third watch, Nathan almost regretted it. "I wonder if I can develop focused mind into something that replaces sleep. I don't understand the biological need for sleep, so I probably can't cover it with regeneration. It's probably better to develop focused mind into something that can be used during rage, though." With those thoughts, Nathan fell asleep for the second time. The next morning, Nathan awoke to the smell of roasting meat. After a wonderful breakfast of thick-cut bacon, they set off for the undead tomb. It wasn't far, and their first signs were a few wandering zombies. They weren't fast or particularly dangerous. Sarah took them out with headshots from several 100 feet away. Even when there was a cluster of zombies, the undead didn't figure out where the projectiles were coming from until they all dropped to the ground, missing some critical cranial component. It wasn't hard to follow the concentration gradient of zombies to find the tomb. It was a rough hole in the side of a hill, clearly dug out from the inside. As Nathan watched, a few more zombies spilled from the opening and started walking around aimlessly. Sarah sighed and reached into her dimensional bag once more, but Nathan held up a hand. "Hold on. I want to see if my anti-magic works against the necromancy animating the zombies." Nathan handed his spear to Arl for safekeeping and walked towards the zombies as they ambled down the slope. He was curious about the spell that animated the undead. It had to be pretty complicated, but apparently it could happen naturally. Nathan wasn't worried about being bitten. These weren't the kind of zombies that could infect you. If they killed you, you'd probably become a zombie due to the presence of ambient death mana that undead gave off. But Nathan felt confident that normal zombies could only threaten him if there were at least dozens of them. He got pretty close before they noticed him, and he used the time to study them. The zombies were wearing the remains of some kind of wrap. The colors had been vibrant once, but time and decay had spoiled the clothes and much of the body underneath. The bodies looked like they'd been badly mummified, with patches of extreme decay and others that seemed surprisingly well preserved. The zombies let out a low moan and trudged towards him. He moved so they'd approach him one at a time. I can experiment on the last one. Let's see how quickly I can take out the first two. He took a few steps forward and speared his right hand into the neck of the first zombie. His fingers punched through the slimy skin, releasing fluid all over his hand. Nathan's hand was covered in stinking gore, and he yanked his hand back. In the moment before he did so, the slithering feeling of death mana brushed against his skin. Yew. The zombie lurched a few more steps towards him, head lolling. It was slower than it had been. Nathan drew back the same hand, clocking the zombie in the face. More gore sprayed, but Nathan absorbed more of the mana, and it fell over and lay still. The next zombie lurched forward teeth first, trying to grapple and bite. It had a small body, though the face was thankfully degraded enough that Nathan didn't really see it as a person. He moved quickly to avoid its grab and laid his fouled hand on the zombie's head. Nathan focused on the feeling of the mana animating the corpse, figuring out what he could about how the mana worked. Weird. It's kind of like a spell, but it doesn't follow smooth lines. Like water flowing through natural channels instead of straight canals, like it's following natural pathways in the corpse. The third zombie was approaching, so Nathan closed his right hand around the second zombie's neck and squeezed. The slimy mana flowed into him like it was being sucked through a straw. Nathan shuddered at the feeling. I think my limit on fighting undead is going to be my stomach. He quickly knocked the feet out from under the third zombie, then stepped on its arms before running his hands over the immobile corpse. It was a struggle to not absorb too much mana from the undead as he examined it. Nathan focused on the clinical nature of his examination, as various secretions covered his hand and flakes of dried flesh stuck to them. I think my immune system is boosted to hell and gone with regeneration, which is probably a good thing. Damn, this is icky. There's a reason I decided not to be a med student. However, he got a pretty good idea of the mana flows in the zombie's body. The nexus was in the head, and mana circulated out from there into the limbs to provide motive force. He'd been right before in that the death mana flowed naturally through the body. Each path wasn't particularly complicated, but the fact that the pattern spread across the entire cadaver in delicate flows made it more intricate than most of the spells Nathan had encountered. Following a hunch, Nathan felt around the ribs and spine again, following pathways from the chest muscles back to the spine and into the head. It seemed to follow the nervous system with some degree of precision. Nathan mapped the death mana, following the nerves between the ribs. Death mana naturally follows nervous system pathways. I bet I could give a necromancer some juicy insights about how the nervous system works. Low tier Identify 10 achieved. Congratulations, you have maxed out this utility skill. It cannot be improved any further. You must achieve insight into this skill to develop it to mid-tier. Neat. But this whole process seems really inefficient. The mana is sluggish and seems blocked in a bunch of places. I wonder if... Nathan absorbed mana from a blockage in the corpse's left arm. The mana started flowing more smoothly, and the arm spasmed, nearly throwing Nathan off as the zombie flexed its arm with new strength. Okay then. I bet that's the difference between a zombie and a ghoul. A lack of mana blockages. Given that this seems self-sustaining and not that hard to work out, I bet necromancers are scary buggers. Mid-tier spell sense 4 achieved. You gonna kill it or kiss it? Stella's voice was disgusted as Nathan stayed bent over the corpse. I learned a lot from it. I think I understand how necromancy animates corpses now. It's pretty interesting. One more test. Nathan tried absorbing mana from a few different places on the zombie, looking for the easiest way to take it down. Most of the mana was concentrated in the head, but he had trouble sucking it out quickly through the skull. The neck was a conduit to the rest of the body, and Nathan found he could suck the zombie dry almost instantly if he grabbed it around the neck or touched its spine. Weak spot is the neck. You know, like it is for living people. Nathan stood up from the corpse and rubbed his hands together to get some of the corpse goo off of them. I can absorb mana from undead. It's just real gross. I think I'll ask you to keep my spear for this one. Arl regarded him warily. Sounds good to me, so long as you stand over there. The heirs looked up at the tunnel together for a moment, visibly steeling themselves to enter the foreboding space. It looked like a ragged mouth in the side of the cliff, with broken rocks guarding